Okay, so now let's take a look at modifying the scores, or at least when the ball moves past one of the paddles, then it needs to increment the score for either the player or the AI. So for this, I'm going to create another text, and this is going to be for my AI text or the AI score, and I'll set the fill color to green, and then the position, I'll just move this 50 units beyond the other score text that we had. Then I'll remember to draw it here. So score text AI. Then I need actual scores. So we'll have a player score, set that to 0, and also an AI score, set that to 0. We need some way to figure out if the ball moves past the paddle. So if it reaches this section here, and we need to run some code. Now to do that, we're going to make use of something similar to our walls that we had. So we'll have these static bodies that pretty much cover the entire length, in this case, of the screen. But we need to set them up with some specific configurations. Up first, let's create those shapes, configure them, and then display them in the world. So first up is going to be a body definition. And I'll say this is my West score zone body definition. It's a B2 default body definition. We'll set this up to be a B2 static body. We'll tell it that the position needs to be at, we can put this at 0. And then the next one here will be at position 6. So that's in the middle of our height on our window. That's it for the body. So let's create the B2 body ID, West score zone ID, B2 create body, world ID, and then we pass in this address for the structure. Next up is a shape definition. So the West score zone shape def, going to be a default shape def. We need to set up some configuration now for this. So the shape def dot enable sensor events. So the sensor events in Box2D, these act like collision or overlap colliders. It won't block anything, but it'll give us a mechanism to query if something passed over this sensor. So let's enable the sensor events. And we also need to tell this shape that it is a sensor. But now enabling it on this object alone isn't going to be enough. We want to know when our ball moves over these sensors. So up here with my ball shape definition, let me just look for it here. We have this enable contact events, but then at the same time, we need to enable sensor events as well on the ball. And we can disable that later on to see what it does. So I have my shape definition here. The next thing I need is a polygon. So for my West score zone geo, this is going to be a B2 make box. I'll make this 0.5, the half width and the half height. We can actually put this to, I want to put this in the center of the screen, but it shouldn't overlap with anything else. So the whole screen height is 12 meters. And I think I already have stuff taking up 1 meter of this space, the north and south walls. So in this case, I'll simply make the half height 5. So the entire thing will be 10 meters. Then we have a B2 shape ID, West score zone shape ID, B2 create polygon shape. We'll pass in the West score zone ID, the reference to my shape definition, and also the West score zone geo. There we go. Let's create a debug shape so that we can see this thing in our world, because currently this is all we need to process these sensor events. But I'd like to see where this thing is. So I'll have a rectangle shape. I'll just call this the West score zone. It needs a size. And we can actually take these values to make things a bit simpler. So this is the half width and the half height. If we double these values, it'll give us the full width and the full height. but these are Box2D values. So I'll need to say Box2D to SFML and then pass in a vector. This is the half height, so we need to multiply this with 2. The west score zone dot set origin can be the same thing. So we get the size and divide by 2. That'll put it in the exact middle of our rectangle. I'd also like to set the position, so we can do that. B2 to SFML, and we get the position with B2 body get position. We pass in the west score zone body ID. And then finally, I'd like to make these things yellow. So set fill color, SF color, yellow. There we go. Let's draw this. So window.draw the west score zone. Let's just make sure that it's showing up. So there we go, here it is. Now currently nothing's going to happen when it passes through there. So that means we still need to handle those sensor events. Now it's going to be very similar to what we did with the contact events. Only in this case, we're going to have a B2 sensor events. I'll just call this the sensor events. And it comes from the B2 world. So the world in which this stuff happens, it happens inside of this world. We can say get sensor events and pass in the world ID we're talking about here. Then again, for int I equals 0, I less than sensor events begin count. This is how many start events this thing registered. Then we have a B2 sensor begin touch event. This is a pointer. And we'll get this from the sensor events.begin events. That's a pointer value if we hover over it. So if we offset it with some integer value, it'll pretty much just advance that pointer. Okay, so in this case, we have a sensor shape ID. So this will give us which one of these was the sensor in this collision. Now in our case, only the score zone is going to be a sensor. So we can take this and compare it with our west score zone shape ID dot index. And if that's the case, then that means the AI scored a point. So we can do this. This also means that the text needs to update. So we'll have a standard string stream here, call it OS. Let's put AI score equals AI score in here. And then we have that AI, the score AI text set string os.string. That's the first thing that we need to do. The next thing is to reset the ball. Now we already have code for that, so I can just take this code and copy it here. Might be a better idea to put this in some method somewhere, but this is fine. We can just keep everything together like this. Let's see if this works. So my AI is going to hit the ball, and then we should see it reset, and the AI got a point. Let's see about those sensor event configs. So it makes sense to set up my west score zone as a sensor and also to enable those sensor events. But let's try this now. If I'm going to disable this here and run this, then nothing happened. So the ball needs to have its sensor events set up. Let's go and add that code again and then try it with the other one. Because my thinking is that the ball has sensor events enabled, and this thing is a sensor, so it should work. Let's see if this does the trick. That also doesn't work. We need both of these things to have sensors enabled. And there we go. Now we can play the game. Let's take care of the other side. So I'll have this score zone thing duplicated. And then instead of west, I'll simply say east. This should do the trick. The only difference is the position. Here we set it to 0. So in this case, the total width of my screen is 16. So we can probably get away with setting it to 15. And then I'd like to draw this thing. Okay, so 16 actually worked. And that gives us this. So we have 2 score zones. Now these yellow bars, they're just for debugging. Once the game is finished, we'll get rid of those. Let's take care of setting up the scoring for the player. And to make sure that it's working, I'm actually going to nerf this AI paddle. I just see here, we have a ball in here somewhere. All right, so my paddle is severely slowed down. Now I need to take care of this sensor event. So here we go. We can simply take this again and say else if the shape of the sensor ID matches the east score zone shape ID, then that means my player score will increase. We'll simply say score is going to be player score, score text will be this, and then we have the exact same logic to reset our ball. Let's see here. And there we go. I think I messed up some other stuff, but my scoring system is working for my player. I'll fix some of these issues, like this ball speed and this whatever's going on down here. And then in the next video, we're going to finish this by checking if we reach score 3, for instance, then we can show a you win screen and we can restart the game.